Hello and welcome. Well, they say never to work with animals and children. So naturally, today's interview is about both. Anyone that's had a pet in their life knows how much love and joy they bring. And when you think about it, there are very few things in the world as perfect as the two. So naturally, the two belong together. Of course, the benefits of children growing up with pets are widely documented with a wide range of benefits. So, to help discuss what some of those are, we welcome our special guest, First Nations people, Indigenous entrepreneur and father, Morgan Coleman. Now, Morgan is the CEO and founder of a startup app, Vets on Call, an app that brings the vet to your home, making it stress-free for pets and their owners to receive quality vet care. And I'm really honoured to have you here today. And thanks so much for your time, Morgan. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me.
Morgan, like you're no stranger to overcoming adversities and succeeding. You're a very inspirational man. As an example, for anyone watching and listening, you were the finalist in the 7 News Young Achiever Award in 2020 and Ernst and Young Indigenous Entrepreneur Achiever of the Year Award in 2019. So congratulations. They are incredible achievements. Um,
Thank you very much.
and today's chat is to cover a lot of key topics from the benefits of children growing up with pets to how in your life so far you've overcome so many adversities, and just to be able to sort of tap into, I guess, some of your inspirational stories and for us to be able to sort of, understand how you've done it for anyone that I guess is always wanting to achieve something in their life. We can always learn from others. So to begin with, I'd love to delve into your expertise on how important pets can be, of course, for the emotional development of children. Now, you've mentioned, and in my research, that your childhood pets taught you some really important lessons that you still carry with you today. So I'd love to know initially, what are some of those lessons?
Well, I think firstly, so I grew up on a farm, and all the kids had their own group of animals that we had to look after, and mine at the time was chickens and goats. And one of the things that I was told and taught very early was responsibility. So me looking after these animals, it really did teach me a sense of responsibility, even from as young as 7 and 8 years of age. Those animals ate before I ate. And what was really instilled into me was that these animals are here for us to look after. And I think that then starts to permeate across other parts of your life as you get older, that sense of responsibility you had for something that was dependent on you, and the outcome
Yes.
of their health and their well-being was dependent on you. It starts to sort of, like I said, permeate across different parts of your life. Like if you want to go on, I don't know, become an AFL footballer, or if you want to become an amazing artist or something like that, the outcome is still very much on you. So it did teach me quite a lot of responsibility. One of the things that I also think that it taught me, and even before we moved out to our farm, we had animals, we had pets, and I see it now in my son, and I realize that this is where I got this from, and it's a sense of it taught me empathy. Even before I could walk and talk, being engaging with animals and seeing they're sentient beings, and seeing the emotions that they have and being able to connect with them the way that we do, from a really young age, taught me about empathy around other people as well. And that's something that I certainly carry with me today.
Yeah.
And I think also, oh, sorry.
Why not continue on? Continue on.
Oh, no, yeah, great. And I think also, furthermore, that the EQ, emotional intelligence that brings, it really does help once they start to go and socialize with other people as well. So I'm seeing that now in my son, who's been at daycare now for about 12 months, and he is by far the most social person there in the room. And I think partly that is certainly his personality, but it's also because Milky was here the day we brought him home from the hospital. So literally from the day he's been in our house, a few days after he was born, he's been growing up with Milky, and watching the way that he was with Milky prior to him going to daycare, I think really shows the benefit in terms of their social skills development.
Yeah, no doubt there is a really special kind of magic, I think, that happens when children are in the presence of animals, as you just described. And I mean, could you maybe just elaborate a little bit more on what you think those benefits are and anything that you remember also from your childhood on that?
Yeah, look, I think so. One of the things actually that research has shown us, and when I read this research, it just made so much sense. And that is that a lot of the time, our pets are our connection to nature. So I think that in the world that we live in now, it's heavily urbanized. And I was saying to a friend the other day that I could go a week or 2 weeks without actually touching nature without my dog. And what our pets actually do, and the research shows, is it's actually our connection back to nature, which is where we really need to be. And so, in terms of the well-being benefits and of pet ownership, it extends so much more than just an excuse to exercise and keeping you more active, and having a companion. It's actually been shown that it's the psychological benefit of having that pet is because it's stemming you back to nature. So I think, like, I look at that now, and when I go out to my parents' farm and or out into the forest for a walk or wherever it is, that connection that I feel with nature, I'm able to take home with my dog, and that's just science is showing that that is just so beneficial for people and also children, as of course.
I just wanted to elaborate on that a little bit more. How do you mean you take that home with your dog? Can you just expand on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, so what I mean by that is if I didn't have Milky at home with me, I would have to actually go out into nature and have that connection. Whereas what the research is showing is that because we've got those pets at home, it's our connection back to nature.
Gotcha.
And so by having her in my house, I've almost got nature in my home with me.
Gotcha. And, as you just explained earlier, of course, animals and pets help cultivate empathy and just respect for all living things. And of course, having a pet, in the family, as many of us have growing up as well, it does create really meaningful encounters not only amplified by the fertile ground that helps to shape a child's sense of self, responsibility and just respect for all living things. I've noticed actually over, and it was I think a news bulletin just a couple of days ago that we're just talking about the Australian pounds have seen a record spike in pet adoptions during COVID last year, and it sort of flowed into this year in 2021. And in particular, the rates of dog adoptions have increased. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I'm a huge proponent of rescuing. In fact, I rescued Milky when she was
Oh, of
very,
course you
very young.
did.
And look, I think, yeah, I want as many people to have pets as possible, because I
Yes.
do really believe in the benefits. In saying that, it needs to be something that you're aware of the responsibilities, because I never want to see an animal that is neglected, or for that somebody isn't quite aware of the kind of responsibility that's required.
Yeah.
So, but in saying that, I think I was really, really pleased with seeing the spike in adoption rates. And in some instances, like the wait lists for adoption through some foster places were crazy long. They were like 12 months or something like that, which it just brings a smile on my face. I love that people are looking at that as a way to give, someone that hasn't got a home and a
Yeah.
loving one.
Now, on that, I just wanted to acknowledge we published your article, and the title is The Benefits of Children Growing Up with Pets. Now, for someone who hasn't read the article yet, can you please tell us what it's about and, of course, just what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, well, it's about obviously the benefits for children growing up with pets. And I wrote it because my son's almost 2, and I've just watched how his relationship with my dog has blossomed, and how much she just loves him as well. Like, it really warms my heart. And I want that for other children too. And so I think that there's a few misconceptions in the out there about like children and pets. And I've heard horror stories of people rehoming dogs or something after they've had a child, and it's just not necessary. And in fact, it's better for your child if they stay. And so I wrote the article just to sort of shed some light on some of those benefits, so that, hopefully it helps somebody down the track.
No doubt it will. So, in your mind, then, how beneficial are animals to the emotional development of children? Yeah, overall, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think overall, very, very important, because further to the reasons I've just given, in terms of helping them develop from an emotional capacity and cognitive capacity, even, um, the owning a pet actually helps them learn about death and the circle of life and those sorts of things. But that also helps them in terms of grieving and loss. Having that companion that, can't necessarily talk back, but is always there for a cuddle, and is an incredibly emotional being itself. Like
Unconditional
I've
love.
watched that, exactly, that unconditional love, and I've watched it with my wife and my son when they've had bad days, and Milky comes up and gives them a cuddle, and she's almost like their shoulder to cry on when they need it. And having that companion for a child, and a safe person to like talk to, or a safe thing to talk to,
Yeah.
that's incredibly beneficial.
Now, in your article, you list your top 5 benefits for children who have a pet. I just wondered if you could quickly go through some of those with us now.
Yeah, so I have covered a few of them already, but I'll go through them. So having a pet actually encourages more exercise. So it means that your children are getting more active, probably yourself as well. And there's a lot of benefits, obviously, from not only a physiological point of view, but from a mental point of view as well, with being more active. But they do they help create social and emotional maturity by building the relationships that they have with their pets. As I mentioned, that it does help them learn about death and coping with death, but it also helps them with grief in other kinds of situations that may pop up in their life.
Mhm.
And it also, like I said, it builds connection with nature. That I spoke about the benefits of that previously. And then lastly, and I didn't actually mention this one in the article, but it actually has been shown that children that grow up with pets have a higher or a stronger immune system. So Milky bringing in some pathogens from her walk isn't necessarily a bad thing. It actually helps children grow stronger.
Love it. And you referenced a study earlier. I'm not sure if this is the same one, but I understand in a recent longitude study suggested that children who grow up with their pets are less likely to face behavioral difficulties or problems with their peers. Can you maybe expand on that? And is there anything else in that study that we should know about, really?
Yeah, so I think this is my interpretation of this study. So with that, having children that, one, have the responsibility. So there's a responsibility of looking after the pet, but there's also the expectations of the behavior for the pet as well. So by them, knowing where they can and can't sit, or, to go outside to go to the bathroom and things
Hmm.
like that, it actually helps to create those same sort of expectations for the child. Not necessarily that they have to go outside for the bathroom, but there's behavioral expectations that the child then starts to adhere to, and they can see the example within their pet.
Yeah. And I understand the study also mentioned that children are also more likely to display pro-social behavior, such as sharing and cooperating with others if they have a pet as well. So, what's been your experience and your observation of this also?
Well, I see that in my son, whose name is Kai, and Milky. Um, Comparative to a friend of ours whose son is not growing up with a pet, um, Kai shares his food with her, for example, which we don't really encourage, because obviously it's helping Milky put on weight. But that kind of, even shares his toys with her. He plays with her. So having that person at home, because he doesn't have a sibling yet, he's able to start building that kind of, okay, well, this toy is not just mine. This is our toy, and we play with this together. And this food is not just mine. This is our food, and I'll give you some, even though I've been told not to. So it's really starting to build out that that awareness that, not everything is to be yours and yours only. And that really, once he goes to daycare, obviously that really helps out with his social interactions.
Mm. Now, I just wanted to just sort of lead into, I guess, just your upbringing as well. I mean, as a Torres Strait Islander, I understand that you experienced lots of challenges growing up Indigenous. I just love if you can, and if you're happy to share about some of those challenges that you faced. Because I've read that you would like to be an example to other Indigenous kids, and your son in particular, um, that business and entrepreneurism is absolutely something that they can pursue. So I'd love for you just to expand on that if you could.
Absolutely. I think when I think about this, when I decided that I was going to start my own business, it's because I was in a job that I really didn't feel empowered. I felt like I wasn't the person that was in charge of my destiny, and that really didn't sit well with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I made the decision that day that I'm going to take charge of this, and the way that I saw forward for that was through business and through entrepreneurship. But if I go back to when I was a child, all the Indigenous people I saw succeeding, they were all sports people. And so when it came time for me to set my path for my career and where I thought that I would get success, it was really limited. I thought that if I wasn't going to be a sports star, then I just wouldn't be successful.
So
And
the
that was a
only
pretty
successful,
terrifying.
so the only successful Indigenous people you could see growing up were those in sporting professions. Is that right?
Yeah. And I mean, I can still name them. They're still slightly my heroes, and I've met a couple of them ever since. But, like Michael Long, Nikki Winmar, Kathy Freeman, but you didn't see Indigenous people, as politicians, or, if I walked into the local bank, I didn't see anyone, working as a bank teller or an accountant or anything like that. And even in my school. And I did grow up in it wasn't a very multicultural town at all. In fact, I think at the time it was the second least multicultural town. But none of my teachers were Indigenous, and that when you start thinking about, okay, well, where can I really go? You're looking for reference points and reference
Mm.
points for people that you connect with and that you relate to. And I just didn't see that outside of the sporting realm. And so, like I said, it was quite terrifying thinking, okay, well, I know I'm not going to be an AFL footballer. Like I know I'm not going to be a professional sportsman. Where could I succeed? And it did take me a while to get to where I am now, obviously, and that realization that business was for me. But I think there's so many opportunities. There's an abundance of opportunities for Indigenous people to succeed outside of sport. And I want to be an example as to the things that we can do if we put our mind to it.
It's really interesting to see how people's life purpose. In my own personal experience, when an idea drops, and when it feels right within you that that's what you're meant to do. So what I'm seeing and hearing from what you're telling us, that having animals in your life from a young age really helps shape your sense of empathy, your sense of responsibility, your work ethic, into your adulthood, which, would I be right to say, really helped form, well, that was how you sort of, I guess, shaped your sense of purpose, and then how you've gone and then launched your business as well? I don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you look at what we're doing from a vet perspective, so the vet industry in itself has the highest suicide rate of any profession in Australia. And
Vets.
it's also got, yep, vets
Are you
have the
kidding me?
highest suicide rate. Nope, that's the truth. And since I've started this business, I've known several vets that have sadly taken their lives. It's got one of the highest churn rates of any industry. So people that go and get qualified, they start working, and 4 or 5 years later, they don't want anything to do with the industry. And that's because, in my opinion, of very rigid, um, the very rigid way that traditional clinics operate. And so when we started, it was like, we're going to do things differently. Obviously, in terms of the way we deliver our services, that's pretty obvious. But furthermore, we were one of the first to bring in a counselling program for our vets. The way that we work is so that vets don't do overtime, and they certainly don't do unpaid overtime. But in terms of their workload, it's drastically reduced by the way that we're able to keep our costs low as a business, and see less clients and still make a really good margin and a great business. But it means that we're able to look after our vets even more. And one of the things that we brought in late last year was that our vets have the opportunity to get across other parts of our business. We're a really dynamic, fast growing business. So there's a lot of opportunities to get involved in other parts of the business, whether it's marketing or education with our staff, or even logistics, operations. And so we provide that opportunity to our vets, because what we see is that a lot of vets get to the point where they feel trapped. They're highly qualified and highly specialized for one job. And they get to the point where they don't want to do that anymore, but they don't necessarily feel like there's a way out for them. And so what we're doing is we're upskilling them in other parts of our business, so that if they want to move into something different, there's the opportunity for them to do that
Good on you. That's
outside of just their
awesome.
clinical work.
Congratulations, mate. That's sensational. So overall then, so how does Vets on Call help time poor parents as well? I mean, how can we integrate that into our lives and people with pets? How does that help?
Well, Vets on Call is a full service veterinary provider. So we do everything that a typical clinic does, with just the vast majority of our services provided in home. So the only things we won't do in the house are x-rays, ultrasounds, and surgery, for obvious reasons. But what it means is that you can work your veterinary appointments around your life. So we have availabilities from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night. And we take our bookings on the hour. So it means that if 4 o'clock you're home with the kids and that's when it's convenient for you to get a vet, that's when you can have a vet. Or if it's first thing in the morning before you leave for work, it means that the vet services are worked around your life, as opposed to the other way around. And you're actually getting a better healthcare outcome for the pets, because we're removing the stress from the situation, which means that we can get a clearer diagnosis. So really, from my perspective, and I'm obviously very biased, it's a win-win-win.
Yeah. So in that instance, would it necessarily help with after hours emergencies? Like, for example, I've got 2 dogs. They're my life. My eldest dog, Johnny, a few weeks ago, it was horrific. He was choking on something that he's eaten a million times before, but just as he's getting older, he's 12 years old now. It just lodged, and we had an RSPCA help book in our top drawer, which I always have there for things like this. But of course, that there wasn't going to be enough to save him. We put him into the car and started to drive him to a 24-hour vet. It dislodged and he was able to breathe, but it was the most distressing thing I've ever experienced in my life. But so with emergencies like that, you're saying that Vets on Call is, as you mentioned before, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., but then for after hour services, we would still go to like a 24-hour service. Is that right?
Yeah. And the reason for that is, we need to be realistic, and we do what is always in the best interest of the pet. Like, I can't tell you how many bookings we've turned down because I'm saying you need to get to an emergency clinic now. And we can't feasibly service you, and I'd just be wasting not only your precious time, particularly if it's in an urgent situation, but I'd be wasting your money. And that's not something that we're willing to do. But Vets on Call, in terms of the amount of hours that we offer, that's really for the convenience of our client. Because a lot of our clients are busy working families or busy professionals that might not get home till 6 p.m. And so having a vet come at 7 p.m. is the perfect solution. And that's what we offer with Vets on Call.
Okay, so this is more sort of proactive healthcare for your pets, I would say. So, like, typically, what are the types of things that you sort of go out and see families, and what to give an indication, anyone watching and listening? Okay, that's what I could sort of have you guys come and have a look at my pet about, as an example. I don't know.
Yeah. Anything that's not an emergency, we do. So, if they're struggling to breathe, they need to go to an emergency clinic. If they've been hit by a car, they need to go to an emergency clinic. Or if they've eaten rat bait or something like that, that really needs to be seen right then and there, with a lot of all the sort of, I guess, like life-saving equipment, sort of like ventilators and things like that. But we do everything from obviously your general checkups, vaccinations, ear, eye, skin conditions, lameness. We've got all the diagnostics that we can look at. So we do blood tests, cytology, all those sorts of things. We do that in home. And if we need to do further workup, like an x-ray or an ultrasound, we'll do that at one of our clinics as well. So like as an example, we did two knee reconstructions for two huskies last week.
At
We're
home?
doing a no. So we took that to our clinic. So we did, but we diagnosed all that stuff in home, and then it's like, okay, we're now going to take you to our clinic
I
to do these
understand.
reconstructions. But
Cool.
what that means for the pet is that the only time they ever set foot in a clinic is if they're going under an anaesthetic, and that's a very, very good outcome for the pet.
Yeah. So overall then, so I mean, families can access Vets on Call. Is it just in Victoria? Are you likely to expand interstate at all?
We're actually in the process of expanding. So we're entering into Brisbane in about 2 weeks. And shortly after that, we'll start moving into Sydney and some of the other capital cities across Australia.
Well, congratulations on your business. No doubt it's going to continue to grow. And with, I mean, with the view of being able to help families and children and their pets overall. So well done. If anyone watching and listening, I guess, was to walk away with some key messages from what we've discussed today, what would they be?
Well, I think the benefits of a child growing up with a pet, that there's numerous, and there's no reason to not have a pet in the family. And there's certainly no reason to get rid of a pet if you're starting a family. But also, that being a working parent or a working professional, it doesn't mean that you can't access the best veterinary care at a time that suits you in your home.
Awesome. We'll have all of your handles and sort of contact details in the show notes along with the article. Morgan, I've really loved chatting with you today. Congratulations on all your success and achievements. And I'm sure many of us will be watching from the sidelines as you continue to grow. But thank you so much for your time today. Take care.
Thank you.
Right, bye.